Last week, Rosecrans was out and General Thomas now leads the army in Chattanooga. This week, Grant takes charge and General Bragg faces a new threat. Once Grant has concentrated all the forces, the Union will have the largest combined army in the West in over a year. But will they be able to utilize it properly? Can the Union make a comeback just 1 month after a loss? And will Grant's aggressive streak continue? The first thing this week is probably the most dangerous: Army politics. General Braxton Bragg relieved one of his most lasting corps commanders, Lieutenant General Leonidas Polk, from command on the 23rd. Polk's hopes are dashed as President Jefferson Davis replaces him with Lieutenant General Hardee. This is as a shock as Davis has a good friendship with Polk. But I guess Davis's relationship with Bragg is just stronger. Don't worry for Polk. The Bishop General will be moved to another command. The same day, General Ulysses S. Grant arrives in Chattanooga, Tennessee, as the commander of the Military Division of the Mississippi, and he will lead from the saddle. He comes at dusk after a long march. But this does nothing to lower his energy, demanding a full briefing about the supply lines, defense, state of the troops, what they're eating tomorrow, everything, before he's willing to take his bed. The next day, with his hands more than full, Grant gives up command of the Army of the Tennessee and hands it over to his favored subordinate, Major General William T. Sherman. Sherman has always been a reliable man to Grant. From Shiloh to Vicksburg, they have been friends throughout the war. Under Grant, Sherman went from being derided as crazy to a, well, still crazy, but victorious general. How will he do with an entire army under him remains to be seen. With all these talks of armies, the question comes to be how to supply them. When Thomas took over, there already was a supply line going north and sneaking around the mountains. But this wasn't bringing in the number of food and ammunition that General Grant wanted. Chief Engineer of the Army of the Cumberland, General William Baldy Smith, also doesn't like the current supply line. But he has a solution. Instead of running north and taking the long way to Bridgeport, the base supply, go west and take the shorter route. Why didn't anyone think of this? Because rebels hold Brown's Ferry, which is directly west of Chattanooga. The ferry would have to be cleared. Lookout Valley, the area that this proposed line would go through, is rough and mountainous. But it's shorter and would allow General Hooker to link up with the forces in Chattanooga. Therefore, Thomas and Grant approved the plan, and the Cracker Line, named after the hardtack cracker, was formed. Well, the idea of it at least. All this action in the West almost makes one forget about the East. Lincoln has not, though, despite the lack of movement there. In fact, he's angry because of it. Executive Mansion. Major General Halleck, Washington, October 24th, 63.
If you have a plan matured, I have nothing to say. If you have not, then I suggest that with all possible expedition, the Army of the Potomac get ready to attack Lee, and that, in the meantime, a raid shall, at all hazards, break the railroad at or near Lynchburg. Yours truly, A. Lincoln.
Now we turn to action west of the Mississippi River. I know, I forgot about them too. Last we saw the Confederates there, they were shooting each other and failing to hold ground, a trend I hope they will keep up. Brigadier General John Marmaduke, the rebel responsible for the murder, who led them in their defeat, decides to take to the offensive and, with 2,000 men, attack Colonel Powell Clayton with anywhere around 1,200 with 300 runaway slaves to defend Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I'll let the Encyclopedia of Arkansas tell you the rest. Shortly after noon, Marmaduke's men set fire to the houses northwest of the square where the 5th Kansas had been staying. Contrabands provided a bucket brigade to keep the fire from igniting Clayton's cotton bale defenses. Volunteers entered the building burnings to save a large number of mules that were trapped inside. By mid-afternoon, after hours of hitting the Yankees with rifle and artillery fire, Marmaduke concluded that his only hope for victory would be a full frontal assault against the federal barricades, and such an attack would be too costly in Confederate casualties. Using or burn as much of the equipment of the Yankee garrison as possible, rebels fell back toward Princeton. The Union suffered 56 casualties to Marmaduke's 40, but the Federals held the town. Marmaduke himself remembers the battle as,
"My troops behaved well. The Federals fought like devils."
Despite my disdain for his cause, I must admit he is right. Now, back to the west. Well, the east, but what I call the west. The Cracker Line is a go, and its architect, General Baldy Smith, is given 2 brigades to clear its first obstacle, the rebels at Brown Ferry. The 1st brigade is Brigadier General John Turchin's, which is to march overland and take up a supporting position on the east side of the ferry. But to secure the west, the 2nd Brigade under Brigadier General William B. Hazen is to take ships operated by the Engineer Brigade, directly under Smith, and take the rebels from the river, though with the potential support of Hooker's corps. Hazen's part is off to great trouble. The boats promised are too small to bring all the soldiers in one trip, forcing the general to split his forces between Colonel Foy and Colonel Langdon. The ships also had iron scraps, delaying the assault even more for the crews to clean them up. Once on the river, the rebels opened fire on them after a close call. Despite orders to keep quiet, some Union soldiers returned with their rifles. This scares off the Confederate skirmishers, allowing the Federals to land. Those Southern skirmishers go to Colonel Oates and his Alabama regiment, telling them of the oncoming Bluecoats. The men in gray decide to counterattack. Union pickets fall back, and it seems like a horrifying battle is about to begin when Colonel Langdon brings in the second half of the Union brigade. The Hazen men open fire on the rebels, wounding Oates and forcing them back to Wauhatchie. I don't know. General Hazen exclaimed after the victory,
"We knocked the lid off the cracker box."
Even after these victories, Lincoln still isn't happy with his officers. Despite no longer residing in my home city of St. Louis, my knowledge of events there has not dwindled. Numerous letters of the suffering Missouri citizens are well known to the public, and the man who was supposed to keep the peace there, General John Schofield, has failed in his duty. In a letter dated the 28th, Lincoln demanded to know why Schofield had disarmed the loyal citizens and their weapons given to the disloyal. He ends the letter with a simple directive:
Prevent violence from whatever quarter, and see that the soldiers themselves do no wrong.
Lincoln's not-so-subtle threat to Schofield is a good start to putting my state back on the right path. Now, to a star on the rise, Nathan Bedford Forrest, a truly despicable man. Well, he has long felt restrained under the cautious command of Braxton Bragg, and has requested to be let free of his handler. President Davis, a man who has done everything to cement Bragg's control, allows the wizard of the saddle to run free, and, to quote the Long couple, the devil was loose. Now we return to the east. There was a bombardment of Fort Sumter. 2,691 shells fell on the fortification in a non-stop barrage that broke apart the rubble named Fort Sumter. 33 rebels died, but they still will not surrender. This week's final thing has us return to the west for the Battle of Wauhatchie. Hooker marched from the south to keep the rebels back east along Lookout Creek. He is pestered by sharpshooters his entire march, whereas 3 divisions are forced to stop and repulse the mosquito-like rebels. Hooker leaves behind Brigadier General John Gary's division from the 12th Corps and continues on to Brown's Ferry with his 2 divisions from the 11th Corps. General James Longstreet is under pressure from General Braxton Bragg to deal with this threat from the west. Having one federal division all by itself, well, it's an enticing target. He had earlier denied attacking Brown's Ferry because of the defendable position there, but no such thing exists at Wauhatchie. Not even an entire division is there, with half of Gary's men defending positions all down their marching line. Longstreet uses Hood's division, led by General Micah Jenkins, to secure his victory, with Colonel John Braden's South Carolina Brigade sent directly to assault Gary, and General Laws and Robertson's brigades to block any reinforcements from Brown's Ferry. General Benning's Georgians will be in reserve. The attack happened late, with the Union being able to prepare for the South Carolina opponents. The first rebel charge failed under musketry and artillery. Further assault on Gary's right and center also died, and a long-range duel of muskets commenced with the secessionist riflemen specifically targeting artillery. The sounds of this battle reached Hooker, and he dispatched Major General Carl Schutz and his division to support those at, I swear English is my first language, Wauhatchie? A mix-up in the orders has Brigadier General Adolf von Steinwe move his division first. Union column moves quickly to support the stranded division, but is ambushed by Law and Robertson. Union Colonel Orwin Smith takes his brigade and charges Law. Hooker desperately tries to support the drive up the hill, ordering Schutz's division to follow Smith up. The darkness does well for Smith, and after a clash of bayonets, he takes the hill. But this has to do with the fact Law wanted to retreat. He received word that the attack on Gary was over, and his task accomplished. The problem was when he sent a letter to Braden, the man was still at Wauhatchie. With this misinformation spreading through the rebels, Benning's brigade also fell back. Braden is now at risk of encirclement from Hooker's column. He has to retreat, just as Gary is running out of ammunition. When dawn rose on the 29th, the Union had held. The 29th had secured the Cracker Line, and Chattanooga had bridges to Brown's Ferry that went to Kelly's Ferry and reached its base at Bridgeport. In fact, I think Longstreet said it best. "We were trying to starve the enemy out by investing him on the only side from which he could not have gathered supplies." Like trying to strangle a man by holding onto his pants. The supply situation allows the Union to keep Chattanooga for as long as they wish. But Grant is not a fan of the defensive. Then there's Sickles. Meade's refusal to reinstate him as a general has broken his heart. And while he officially denies the dinner in his honor on account of his physical health, we all know that it isn't his leg that aches, but his soul. That's where the weekends end. Oh boy, it's good to have some fresh blood in this war. I have covered skirmishes and internal army politicking, but it's been so long since I felt like the West or any part of the war has actually been going somewhere. If Grant has brought anything to the defenders of Chattanooga, it's a clear plan, and he has accomplished it. Supplies are flowing into the military division he leads, but now that it's fed and armed, can it throw off its besiegers? We will have to wait and see, but there is reason to be hopeful, my friends. Hi, it's the entire Civil Week by Week team here. With things changing from my set to my time, I'm thinking of changing up how I do the channel. I'm thinking of no longer sitting so far away from the camera, but instead right here, getting the emotion more quickly. It's just a thought coming around. I'm planning on trying it out, but I would just like to know what you guys think. I hope to see you next week. Shortly after noon, Marmaduke's men set fire to the houses northwest of the square where the 5th Kansas had been staying. The contrabands provided a bucket brigade to keep the fire from igniting Clayton's cotton bale defenses. Volunteers entered the building burnings to save a large number of mules that were trapped inside. By mid-afternoon, after hours of hitting the Yankees with rifle and artillery fire, Marmaduke concluded that his only hope for victory would be a full frontal assault against the Federal barricades, and such an attack would be too costly in Confederate casualties. Seizing or burning as much of the equipment of the Yankee garrison as possible, rebels fell back toward Princeton.